All right, so we're moving on to our headline of the week. Are you ready, sir?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so we're checking out this story. I mean, I generally, I keep talking about the Daily Wire. I mean, we're going to use them here. Definitely not the only ones to report on this story, but they definitely have the more conservative take on it. Although, I don't know, this is probably going to be slightly more objectively covered. But okay, now hockey is my favorite sport. I will say so. I guess the NHL's been pushing the wokeness a bit more lately. They weren't the first, but they are taking part. So let's see here. Player. Now this is interesting because I'm a Sabres fan, and the Flyers are sort of arch rivals, and so I'm not supposed to like this guy. Okay, but we'll read the headline here. True to myself and my religion, NHL player Ivan Provorov refuses to participate in team's Pride Night festivities. So I remember I'm going to an AHL game, hopefully, in March. And I remember looking through some of the scheduling. I don't remember if it was NHL. I think it was NHL when I went to a Sabres game with my dad. But yeah, there was a Pride Night planned out. One of those nights. Fortunately, it wasn't. Wasn't a night that would work for us. But let's read here. Philadelphia Flyers defenseman Ivan Provorov refused to take the ice during warmups to observe Pride Night on Tuesday, citing his Christian faith. Now, I guess he's Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, I guess. But again, we're not getting into the big theological distinctives. This is more political connections with general, Christian traditions. But Provorov chose not to participate in the team promotion intended to show support for the LGBTQ plus community. The pregame skate included players wearing Pride-themed jerseys that displayed their names and numbers in rainbow colors and holding hockey sticks wrapped in rainbow-colored tape before the Flyers' home game against the Anaheim Ducks. I respect everybody and I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. Provorov told reporters following the game. Provorov confirmed that his religion is Russian Orthodox. That's right. Making no other comments on the matter. I respect everybody and I respect everybody's choices. There's the tweet right there, summarizing it. Right. Flyers head coach John. This is something I'm curious about, how the coach responded and how the other players responded, if anything here. Defended Provorov's decision to stand by his convictions. Okay. Well, there you go. He's being true to himself and to his religion. It's one thing I respect about Provi. He's always true to himself. A reporter asked Tortorella whether he considered keeping Provorov out of the game over the decision. The Flyers coach replied no, declining other questions on the issue. Okay. Provorov went on to play after the pregame Pride Night festivities. The Flyers beat the Ducks 5-2. Amen. The issue was divisive among many hockey fans. SB Nation NHL editorial director Stephen Driver blasted the players' refusal to take part. Now, this, I think I heard the audio of this. Ivan Provorov was allowed to play in a game for the Philadelphia Flyers, the organization that was the first to say that you will be removed from the arena if you utter a homophobic slur. After refusing to wear a Pride logo for warmups, Driver tweeted, "What an absolute disgrace." Oh, no, that's not the audio. That's just a tweet. But no, let me see if they mention it here. If not, I'll mention it. But others were quick to support Provorov's choice to skip the pregame activities. My new favorite hockey player is Ivan Provorov, NHL Flyers. I also respect people's choices, but that doesn't mean I have to support them. Way to go, Ivan. The Flyers released a statement following the game, but did not mention Provorov. The Philadelphia Flyers organization is committed to inclusivity and is proud to support the local LGBTQ plus community, the statement said. Many of our players are active in their support. We are proud to host our annual Pride Night again this year. The Flyers will continue to be strong advocates for inclusivity of the LGBTQ plus community. It's not the first time Pride Night festivities have divided professional athletes. In June, at least 5 Tampa Bay Rays players refused to wear rainbow-themed logos as part of the team's Pride Night promotion. Interesting. It's a hard decision, pitcher Jason Adams said, because it because ultimately we all said that what we want is them to know that all are welcome and loved here. But when we put it on our bodies, I think a lot of guys decided that it's just a lifestyle that maybe, not that they look down on anybody or think differently, it's just that maybe we don't want to encourage it if we believe in Jesus, who's encouraged us to live a lifestyle that will abstain from that behavior. Just like Jesus encourages me as a heterosexual male to abstain from sex outside of the confines of marriage, it's no different. All right, well, there is the Daily Wire's spin on it. Let's see here. I was going to say something. Oh, yeah, I remember I was listening to a little bit of Michael Knowles today talk about the story, and he played a clip from a news reporter who basically said the NHL should fine the Flyers $1 million because of this. His point, which of course was kind of an obvious point, was that the rhetoric around this used to be like, look, how does this affect you? Why are you bothered by this? And now it's like, why are you bothered this? Oh, and by the way, if you don't wear what I tell you to, you have to pay $1 million. So, anyways, I mean, I think my little insertions and commentary there, I mean, I'm sure we largely agree on principle with a lot of this. What is your take on sort of how this played out?
Yeah, kudos to the player for making a stand on what he thought was an important statement to make. I wish more would make that same statement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I echo his words that I will always be respectful of other people. I will always treat people fairly. I never want to cause any person harm. But it's just ridiculous. The idea that I'm a horrible bigot and an evil intended person if I refuse to wear a pride jersey, pride shirt, pride logo, whatever, fly the pride flag, that somehow means that, that I would be somehow less than welcoming of people, or maybe even this, like I constantly hear this rhetoric that my lack of affirmation is somehow violent towards the cause, like it'll cause violent acts.
Silence is violence.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point where like you hear that our words in rejecting these type of things will actually cause physical violence.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll stir violent actions.
Yeah.
And I reject that.
Well, I remember when
flatly,
there was a shooting at a what was it, a gay bar, I believe, not long ago. And they immediately said, oh, it's probably like, religious extremist or something. No, it turned out to be a member of that community. And the story immediately went away out of the news. You didn't hear about it anymore. It's like, okay, gives you a little insight as to sort of how the narratives are structured. I guess, boy, there's like a million questions that pop up when you deal with difficult sort of cultural engagement issues like this that are so specific. Like, I don't know. There was a. I actually talked about this in like a previous video a little bit. Not this specific issue. I mean, this is a recent story, but there's a certain mindset you kind of have to have, and confidence you have to have as a Christian of a certain type that's really kind of well articulated, at least in your own mind, in order to kind of withstand the pressure of these words that are said about Christians, in that you either believe what Romans 1 says about the nature of sin in the world, or you don't. If you haven't fully integrated that passage into your thinking and into your heart, you're going to take certain things said about you to heart that you shouldn't. Because if Romans 1 is true, these people have a knowledge of God. The people criticizing, people who struggle in any lifestyle. And basically what that means is, if that's true of the people, these news reporters, the people setting up these events, the people calling these names, calling Christians these names, if that's true, they don't, in their heart of hearts, believe those things are true. So my point is, like, if you believe that they really, truly, deeply believe that you're a horrible person, that can be crushing.
Yeah.
And they either do or they don't. Like for them, this is the new civil rights movement. This is like
Yeah.
there's a reason they're so passionate about it, is because they've convinced themselves on some significant level that they are basically the next generation of people fighting, like Martin Luther King did, right?
Hmm.
And therefore, it's like you're equivalent to the kind of person who doesn't want, black people to be in the same school as your kids or something like that.
Hmm.
That's the kind of evil they think they're fighting. And so you have to, if you're going to remain confident in this as a Christian, like you have to believe that that belief doesn't actually go down to their core. To their core, at their actual core, the theology of Romans 1 is true. And they don't actually think that about you. Um, and it's like, that's one of those things where it's like, we're either right about that as Christians or we're wrong.
Hmm.
It's like, it's this unavoidable dividing line that's so deep, and it makes it difficult. It's like you kind of have to enter the discussion and the situation with that kind of confidence, and it
Yeah.
takes the Holy Spirit's help, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing too, just like even from, I don't know, the 500,000 foot view of it all. You
Mm-hmm.
see this across the board in every sports league that's out there. I'm a big fan of European soccer. I watch the British Premier League, and they do a thing every year called Rainbow Laces.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting there because there's certain segments of the participants in the league that get away with not wearing the rainbow laces, and they're Muslim players. Um,
Mm.
they don't. I've never really heard anybody make any statements towards Christianity connected to any of this, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody bats an eye that the Muslim players don't have to wear the rainbow laces.
Yeah.
Nothing. I've not heard anything said once.
That's been an
Uh,
interesting development culturally with this, in that following like 9/11, there was probably a bit of an over stereotyping of
mhm,
Muslim people after that. Um, and there was sort of a cultural divide at that point where, like, I think conservative people were a little more willing to be suspicious. Or at least that
mhm,
was the accusation. There was probably some truth to it because, it was Bush, Republicans had that more aggressive foreign policy and all that stuff. And okay.
yeah.
Um, and so there was a divide early on where, like, people of the left were much more tolerant of Muslims,
Mhm,
right? But now you're
right.
seeing, for instance, these school board meetings and things where parents come and protest certain kind of, indoctrination in the schools, and Muslims are showing up and siding with conservative Christians. And so I thought that now that's a weird cultural shift, and like, uh, you know, um, that's a weird cultural shift, and it's interesting to see, left wing media try to spin that, because they've been on the side of the Muslims in their rhetoric for years now.
Mhm,
Um, and so they're standing side by side. Christians are getting up who used to, I'd say in the early 2000s have that more difficult relationship with Muslims. Now they're standing up and saying, "Wow, aren't you a bigot?" Attacking this poor Muslim man's faith. Isn't that
yeah.
interesting? It's like it's been
How
funny.
the tables have turned.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Uh,
it's interesting to me of that lopsided nature of it.
mm-hmm,
Um, but in many ways, like I think you're absolutely right. Like viewing Romans 1 in light of all of this, like we shouldn't be all that shocked either that this is what is out there. I
mm-hmm,
mean, people are lost in their sin. They're dead in their sin and trespasses, and so they're going to be blind to a lot of the reality of what's really at work in all of this.
mm-hmm,
Um, it's really sad that a guy can be treated so harshly just because he didn't want to participate in something. I mean,
mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah, it
I'm
should
grateful.
disabuse Christians at this point. Some Christians still want to kind of live in the past in the way they see that, and like hope for some kind of
Yeah,
uh they have a more rose-colored view of society at the moment, but it should disabuse them of any um illusions that this is just a matter of libertarianism. This is one of the reasons,
right.
like a lot of the time Christians kind of shift in their rhetoric here, or they'll buy into a more libertarian take where it's like, uh you know we we did have more cultural authority back in the day, sure, which we've lost to a large extent. And now we've sort of gotten to the point where it's like we're talking like liberals did in the 90s or whatever. It's like it doesn't affect you, live and let live. But now that we're not quite able to live and let live, we're sort of making the libertarian argument. This is something Doug Wilson talks about a lot. It's like it's not whether there's going to be a moral standard enforced, it's whose, and it always will be. This is something like I mentioned Tim Pool. I was going to mention him before because he just covered this story like a couple hours ago, and he was like a Bernie supporter. He calls himself a disaffected liberal. He's perfectly pro-gay basically, but he's kind of sick of the authoritarian nature of the left in a lot of ways. So he basically was in favor of this guy being left alone. But all that to say, like I remember there was an argument. Michael Knowles did a recent show. He's a Roman Catholic commentator with the Daily Wire. He was on Tim Pool's show, and he had an argument with like the super libertarian sort of co-host of the show, and they went back and forth on this. And he's like, "Look, the libertarian guy. It's clear he's kind of cloaking his conservative opinions in a lot of ways. He's like, I don't think children should be taken away from their parents if the parents won't transition the child, right? And so he's making a libertarian appeal to allow parents to be conservative, right? And then Michael Knowles and Tim Pool, I don't know if that was in the same show, but they had this, I think it was the same show. Michael Knowles is like, but wait, look, would you be in favor of the government coming and intervening if the parents were in favor of, effectively castrating their child? And like, conservatives often can't make up their mind once they kind of get into that sort of dabbling with libertarianism. It's like either you think this is child abuse or you don't. You are in favor of government intervention if it's ideologically aligned with you. And I think that's true for everybody. I don't think you can be a pure libertarian once you see the connection between morality and the law. So it's a difficult thing to realize, and it's like, because I think this is something this is where like we keep again bring up the Daily Wire again. There's a lot of variety of opinion in a site like that, which is why I don't think they're controlled opposition, which a lot of people say. You got a Ben Shapiro who talks about a more libertarian take. Like he's like, well, religiously I am against gay marriage, but I think I'm more libertarian and that government should get out of the business of marriage and people should do what they want. But then you got a Michael Knowles who's, I mean, the accusation would be he's much more authoritarian. And he's like, look, conservatism should actually have authority in society, is his opinion. And then you've got an Andrew Klavan who actually has a gay son and is in favor of that, but claims to be a Christian. So there is actual variety there. But it's been thought provoking to sort of examine all of that.